Welcome to Heartbeat of Humanity, a podcast series for staff and volunteers in the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement working with mental health and psychosocial support services. My name is Jesper Guhle and I am a communications officer working for the IFRC Psychosocial Centre. 1 year into the Russia-Ukraine international armed conflict, the impact on the mental health of people affected inside and outside of Ukraine is growing. The IFRC network in Europe is running its biggest mental health response in history as millions of people struggle to cope with the anguish and stress of this crisis. Volunteers and staff in Ukraine and across Europe are providing mental health and psychosocial support, but we know that these needs will continue to grow and last for years to come. Earlier this month, during a visit to Ukraine, I had the opportunity to interview Bethan Mcevoy, MHPSS delegate for the Danish Red Cross in Ukraine, and Anna Didenko, head of the MHPSS Unit in the Ukrainian Red Cross Society. And my first question to Bethan was, 1 year into the conflict, what are the MHPSS needs of people in Ukraine?
I mean, it's difficult to say for everyone, of course, but I think the things that we have come across so far, working together with the Ukrainian Red Cross, is seeing that a lot of people are feeling quite anxious. A lot of people are coping with grief and with loss. A lot of people feel worried about their future. And people are struggling to make sense of their new reality or the reality that they're currently living in. I think it seems as though people held on for quite some time. At the beginning, were coping quite well. But what we've started to see is that people are starting to struggle now. It feels a bit harder to hold on to hope. It feels a bit harder not to worry about loved ones who are missing or away, and a bit harder to have that sense of collective support. So it seems to be getting more challenging for people.
And I assume that the MHPSS needs in Ukraine are not the same all over the country.
No, it seems to be quite different. I mean, I think, Anna, you would know better, but it does seem to be that for people who are living in the West, for example, where things have been more settled, you have two things happening. You have one, which is now people have had more time to return to normalcy, so you actually may start to see more of the longer term signs. You might even begin to see some signs of trauma. And then you have other people who are actually coping quite well and getting on with life and able to work and to be with families. And then, of course, you have people still living in ongoing significant conflict, where you have both, again, people focusing on their basic needs. So not even having the time or the energy to think about, am I stressed or am I not stressed, but actually, am I safe? Where are my family? Where's my food? Where's my water? And then other people who have actually been exposed to, living in shelters for long periods of time, living under constant sirens or bombardments, struggling with sleep, and then experiencing or exhibiting signs of more acute stress. So it can be quite varied, but it doesn't seem to be as clear-cut as if you live here it's like this and if you live here it's like that, because people are moving all the time and there are different challenges depending on where you are in Ukraine.
Anna, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I have something to add regarding what Bethan was mentioning. I think also there is a need, basic feeling of safety is still missing in almost all territories. It may also differ from one region to another depending on how close to the war zone you are located. But still, in any place in Ukraine, you cannot say that it's like 100% safe here. So still people are worried for their loved ones, because I think now also, maybe not all, but a lot of families, they have somebody from the family members who are also serving in the army, and it also gives you additional emotional tension on that you are thinking about your relatives all the time, about your children, about your fathers, and so on. Also, in some regions, I think that it's also related not only to the region but individually, because some people are coping better. They have, for example, stable work, and other people, for example, who do not have work, they also may be more in a danger to any like additional emotional needs or challenges, even if they're living in, for example, more safer regions of Ukraine. But also, I think that thinking about 1 year period, at the beginning it was more health that caused additional tension to the people, and also people was not aware of what they need to do. For example, if there is like bombing or if there is alarm sirens everywhere and so on, and it caused additional tension. And now of course, it's hard to live during like 1 year in this process, but people are more prepared also. And now when you heard about some things going on, also like state authorities, everyone is more prepared. They know what to do, how to respond. They have more clear structured algorithm. Cannot say that it's like working or it doesn't feel additional tension, but I feel that society is more prepared to those things that may appear in the future. So basically we are not shocked now, but also due to the duration of everything that is going on, it feels that coping mechanism that was working like during this year period start not working so well now, because people need more support in terms of their inner resources, like getting more tired, if I can say so.
So tell me about the response of Danish Red Cross and Ukrainian Red Cross Society.
Speaking about like 1 year period of response, I think that it changed a lot during this period, because at the beginning, like last February, we was also in some shock state, and we was trying to understand what needs we can cover with limited resources that we had at the beginning. Human resources as well. For sure, we had previous capacity built during like last 5-6 years before. But we was not expecting so big scale of needs and of like people asking about support from different directions. And we started with covering basic needs where we could. So there was a lot of evacuation going on. There was a lot of transition points in railway stations, in bus stations. So basically our volunteers was focusing on supporting and providing psychological first aid during this evacuation, or in railway station. In some regions, in some cities, we have like child friendly spaces established where volunteers was providing psychological first aid, basic psychosocial support for the families, especially for families with children, as well as for elderly people and so on. Even now we also support people during evacuation. There is like not so large number of people who is evacuated now, but still when it's needed, our volunteers also supported, for example, elderly people and helping them going from one region to another. And also at the beginning we was trying to help children with provision of PSS family sets in the railway station, where we have like toys and some art materials, informational materials about stress, how to cope better, how to support children during the war, and we provided these small bags for them families. And because usually families was with children, they was traveling with like limited number of things they could bring, and usually like they left toys and things for their children because there was no space for it. So we saw that also even with this small support, children was very like happy, and some of them even mentioned that they find new toy and they are able to sleep now, because old ones, they left in their house and they was not able to sleep for 1 or 2 days without it. Also speaking about basic needs, at that period of time we saw that it's a main need, because a lot of people was able to cope with some small support and with helping them with basic needs. And I think it's what we need to remember during the emergencies, that it may not be a space for any specialized support only for people with mental health conditions, but for general population you will need to respond to the basic needs, and we will be able to support more people with this basic support. I think also there was a big need with information in general, and a lot of people called for the hotlines, like national hotline of the URCS. It's still functioning, and we receive 1,000 of calls each month. Also, we have some local helplines of the regional organization, where also people provide psychological first aid while speaking with beneficiaries. Speaking about our response now, we was able to reach people in almost all regions of Ukraine. We are working in 20 regions out of 24, and also in the city of Kiev. And still we see the need of the basic psychosocial support. So we provide basic services, activities for children, for adults, for families. In collective centers, in premises of the Ukrainian Red Cross, we cooperate with different partner organizations in Ukraine in order to support people better, and we try to cooperate with other organizations who is working in regions to also who provide more specialized services in order to refer to these services. But now we also see the need on developing more focused and specialized psychological sessions for people who are affected, because as we already mentioned, needs of people is not getting more specialized, but now we can see that reactions of people after some time, they became more stable. So some people really need additional support, because for example at the beginning those basic support was enough, and now we see that in order to support less number of people, but with more focused support, we need also to think about adding more specialized services to some people, not for everyone for sure. All of the things that is going on now and what we are doing, it will not be possible without also international support, and thanks for the Danish Red Cross very much, because with their support, Ukrainian Red Cross volunteers was able to work very hard and support a big number of people all over Ukraine. It's more than 250,000 people that was supported during 2022, and our main partner is also Danish Red Cross, who is supporting us in all of this process. So thank you very much for this also.
Yeah, thanks. And I think what's been very impressive about the Ukrainian Red Cross's response is not just the numbers, but it's the kind of response that they've given to support people's mental health and psychosocial well-being. I mean, what we know about mental health in conflict and mental health in emergencies is that it's really the basics that are the most important things that help recovery. And all of us now have lived through COVID, we've lived through our own version of disaster, so we know we can all relate to the feeling of disruption in your lives. And if you think about what makes you feel well, it's understanding the situation, it's information, it's being connected to your loved ones, it's feeling hopeful that the situation is going to improve, and feeling that you're able to do something about it, that you have the skills able to do that. And for the vast majority of people, that's what they need. And so the Ukrainian Red Cross's response to that is providing people with these basics, is these places where they can feel safe, these places where they can connect to their new communities or to their loved ones, where they can feel hopeful, where they can laugh and have a bit of relief, where they can understand their situation and feel skilled in their own recovery. And it makes perfect sense. And it's this kind of support, that this kind of approach that we really need to be encouraging as a movement and supporting, because that's what the vast majority of the population needs. And then, as Anna said, then it means that we can really tailor that specialized support to those who really, really need it, to those who, that small percentage who have the acute stress reactions. And I think the Ukrainian Red Cross have done that so well in meeting so many people, such a huge number of people with what they really need. And now they're really working to link up those who need more support with those specialized services.
Over the last year, scaling up the MHPSS services in the programs of Ukrainian Red Cross must have been a big challenge. What was the biggest challenge?
I think the bigger challenge is you need to be able to respond very fast and limited capacities, and for sure to make possible to engage those people who was working before, because most of the response before February last year was focused in east part of the Ukraine, and these people need to move from at the beginning from these regions, and we was trying very hard to use our human resources and to help our volunteers and staff to be part of the Ukrainian Red Cross and of the response in those regions where they end up after they was displaced, basically. And maintaining and supporting of these people, mentoring them, I think it was the biggest challenge, how to scale up, how to engage new people, and how to use already existed resources, human resources, in a better way. And basically we was able to support our staff and volunteers, and they stayed in the Red Cross in other regions, in other positions, but we use their experience and there was interest also to be part of all of this response. It's like one thing, and now we are also this process of capacity building taking a lot of time, but without investing to the people who is providing this support, all of this is not possible, because MHPSS is always about people who provide support and people who receive support. And other thing is responding to different needs and requests, because this request sometimes is opposite, and you need to think about how to support better staff and volunteers. You need to think about how to support beneficiaries with basic needs, how to support regional organizations, how to support branches of these organizations, how to support elderly, how to better work with children, how to work with families, how to work with people who have lost somebody. We have requests for psychological first aid for the staff of the Ukrainian Red Cross, for volunteers of Ukrainian Red Cross, for the staff of other organizations, NGOs, police, teachers, and school psychologists, and they may have additional requests, so we need to adapt those trainings that we have a standard psychological first aid training. And we need to be able to change it very quickly according to the needs. We have requests from health and cooperating with mobile health unit, with also implementing MHPSS together with home-based care, training of the home-based care, emergency response teams, as well as mobile health unit and psychological first aid. Providing of additional support to people, for example, during evacuation, together with emergency response teams and so on. And this number of requests, they are like raising each day sometimes, and it's really hard to prioritize sometimes that there is some things that we can respond now, and there is other things that we understand there is a need for them, but we need to postpone them for some period of time, because you cannot support everyone in the same time. But it's also hard to understand that you cannot do everything in the same time in all regions. So I think it's like you always need to choose, and it's also like dilemma what to prioritize.
Bethan, you have anything to add?
No, I agree. I think I've been very fortunate to work alongside Anna and the other colleagues in the MHPSS unit, and have been alongside them as they've had to manage all these different requests. And I can't imagine how challenging it is when it's your own country and you care and you feel and you recognize what people are going through. Of course, you want to do everything you possibly can to support everyone you possibly can, and you can't. And I think that's very painful and very difficult, and means that you've had this, my colleagues at the Ukrainian Red Cross have been working tirelessly for all these months with very little break to try and meet those needs. And they really have met those needs, and that's been very impressive. But the consequence, as you can hear as Anna lists through all of those requests, is it's really so much. And I think sometimes we have this perception that if you're in mental health, you can do it all. You don't have your own needs. But of course, people are people, and people inside of URCS are also impacted by the conflict and also grappling with their own experiences, and family members being impacted and having to adjust to the sirens and the bombardments. And yet they continue, and they are able to deliver such impressive results. So I think that prioritization is really tough. And I think it's fantastic that we're now talking more about mental health, but the consequence of that is that everybody wants to do something with mental health. And so there's a lot of awareness raising that the URCS has to do as well about what mental health means, what psychosocial means, and that can also be a challenge, is helping people understand what is, as Anna said, they have to provide certain standards. They have to make sure people are trained. It has to be ethical. It has to be safe. And that can take a bit more time, and people don't always understand that. So I think that's really challenging as well.
So let's talk about the staff and the volunteers. You said that they want to do everything, and they manage, but I'm sure it also takes a toll on them. So what do you do to support the mental health of staff and volunteers?
I think it's a very good question, because volunteers and staff, they are always left behind, because we want to support others, and sometimes you really need to convince people that you also need to take care of yourself. But speaking about MHPSS, I think what is great in this direction also is that we always prioritize staff and volunteer well-being as well. And we try to put this component to all of our work. So basically, if you have any activities for beneficiaries in terms of MHPSS, you need to also have things to support for staff and volunteers. And we try to do it before also, but for sure we see now that, as also Bethan mentioned, staff is affected and volunteers as well, as a part, as a people who is living in the conflict. So they're not only supporting people, but they are also affected by the war on themselves. So what we try to do now, and also with support of our partner and in EU for Health project, we also working with creating a system of support, not only some random activities, but we are thinking about ways to make it structured and have formalized system of support of the staff and of the volunteers. But what it means in practice is that we are looking for different needs of different directions. Who is working, first of all, who is working with beneficiaries. So we are looking on the support system, how it can look like, for example, for the people who is providing services like social services as home-based care. We are looking about how to support a mobile health unit team. We are looking for the support for the informational center, basically our hotline. So, for example, for the hotline, we have a regular supervision for the psychologists working in a hotline, as well as we establishing regular supervision for the operators. We call them like general operators. Basically, they are responding not only for the psychosocial or psychological requests, they're responding, they provide information about all kinds of activities and support that Ukrainian Red Cross is provided. Also, we are looking for peer supervision system for the home-based care and for the mobile health unit. What we have also in regions, we cooperate a lot with organizational development units that we have in Ukrainian Red Cross, organizational development department, a volunteer unit. In regions where we have MHPSS activities with the aim of support, basically it's formal or informal meeting for staff and volunteers involved at least to the MHPSS activities. They are obligatory, so each region conducts them on a regular basis. It can be meetings once a week or 2 times per month. We also have experience exchanging between branches when one team can go to other region to see how this team in other regions is functioning. Other things that we have, it's individual counseling sessions, psychological. It's external company. We was able to have a contract with this external company who provide free psychological counseling sessions for all staff and volunteers. It's for free, it's online. So basically you can call from every location where you have any mobile connection, and basically it's in all regions of Ukraine. You can call and ask for psychological support, and you will get psychologists who will support you. So when you need this support, you can call and ask for it, and you can choose time which can work for you the best. What else? We also have, we prepared informational materials and shared with our volunteers and staff about how you can better support yourself, some kind of checklist for your how to take care of yourself, as well as a checklist for volunteer leader, how they can better take care of their teams, as well as some short guide for how to deal better with stress, with some instruments that you can use and train your resilience basically on a constant basis. And also we cooperate with our volunteer unit on implementing how to take care of the teams sessions for the volunteer leaders. So basically we teach them how they can better provide support and organize meetings for their volunteers.
I just want to add that I mean, you can hear how much the MHPSS unit in Ukraine is doing for the Ukrainian Red Cross, but it's also important, I think, to consider as a partner national society how you do or do not support caring for staff and volunteers, and how much of a responsibility that we have when we are lucky enough to work with a national society to ensure that we're also advocating for caring for staff and volunteers, and ensuring that all funding should include a component of caring for staff and volunteers, because maybe sometimes we forget that we can add stress if we're not collaborating or working well with the national society, and we, it's important. I think one of my biggest learnings has been how can I as a partner add stress or remove stress, for my colleagues that I'm working with, and I think that's really important that we think about how we take care of our colleagues, how we model taking care, but also how we ensure that for every department. I mean, I'm lucky to work with the MHPSS unit, so of course we talk about it all the time, but it's not just about MHPSS, it's about HR, it's about volunteer development, it's about management as well. They also deserve to be cared for and supported. So yeah, for all of us to take that into consideration when we're working with national societies.
Yeah, I can add regarding responsibility that for sure well-being of staff and volunteers should not be only responsibility for MHPSS. I mean, not only in Ukraine but in general in the movement. And it doesn't mean that a component of caring of staff and volunteers should be included only to the MHPSS programs as obligatory. It should be part of all kind of programs which involved cooperation and support to the beneficiaries, because if you work with people in distress, you need also to provide support for the staff and volunteers working with them.
Moving forward, what are you planning to do to further implement MHPSS services in the programs in ULCS?
Not only in caring for staff and volunteers, in general, yes.
General.
We are planning to cooperate more with other departments, and I think it's a best way and ways to answer in a big number of requests, because people, MHPSS volunteers, for example, they cannot do everything, and for sure we see that still we cannot cover all needs all over Ukraine. Even if we combine all organizations who is working in Ukraine right now, still there is additional needs. So basically the best way is to support and include MHPSS component to the work of other department, basically teach people how they can better support or also support MHPSS needs while they provide social services, while they provide medical assistance, while they provide responding during emergencies. So we started to work more closely, for example, to include MHPSS to the home-based care, to include MHPSS to the mobile health unit, to include MHPSS while working of emergency response teams. It will include training of these people. We already do it, but it's planned to expand this, as well as it will include some activities that these people, for example, mobile health unit can do additionally while they providing support, medical support to the beneficiaries. Other things, we still want to continue with our community-based psychosocial support services, which is the main part now, and we see results of them, as well as we see that this is the best way for including communities to the decision-making, as well as making them feel more confident in terms of giving them space where they can also help to respond to their needs. And I think the main plus of Ukrainian Red Cross or of all Red Crosses is that we can respond to the needs all over the countries, because we are presented in all regions, we are presented in all branches. We have our Red Cross branch, and there is volunteers, and this basic level of support, we can teach them how to do it, and basically we do this. And with this basic level, we can cover most of the needs of the PSS needs of the people in these areas. And also, if compare with other international organizations, usually they are focusing in the big cities, and there is a very limited number of organizations and lack of support in rural areas, in districts, and at least in those districts where URCS is present, we can play a vital role in answering to these community-based needs. Also, what we plan is together with these community-based basic services, trying to respond to more specialized needs, and we understand that the number of people who will need this support is less, but we see that these needs also getting bigger and bigger due to the duration of all of this conflict going on, and more people will need more specialized support together with basic support. We are not trying to do specialized support without basic. We try to add this specialized support to basic services. And other thing is psychoeducation, and still there is a big need for psychoeducation for the population about how they can better cope, about how they can deal with children needs as well. And I think what we saw in the nearest future, there will be a big need on helping people, demobilized servicemen, veterans and their families who will come back from the war zone, who will come back to the normal life. And I think there will be a big challenge in helping these people to adapt to this normal life, as well as helping their families to live in this new reality. And I think that our also target will be psychoeducation of the family, psychoeducation of these demobilized servicemen, as well as additional psychological, psychosocial support to them in order them to be part of the society, as well as some social cohesion activities in terms of helping local community to better work with and live with IDPs as well as demobilized servicemen all together, because I do not think that we will be able to come back to normal reality. I mean that our reality will be changed, and all people will need to understand that it never will be the same as it was before, and all of us need to try to deal with and know how to live in this new life.
Thank you to the two of you for participating in this podcast and for talking to me about the MHPSS needs in Ukraine and the Red Cross response.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Heartbeat of Humanity, a podcast series for Red Cross, Red Crescent movement staff and volunteers about mental health and psychosocial support. In this episode, Bethan Mcevoy, MHPSS delegate for the Danish Red Cross in Ukraine, and Anna Didenko, head of the MHPSS Unit in the Ukrainian Red Cross Society, have explained the mental health and psychosocial support needs of people in Ukraine 1 year into the Russia-Ukraine international armed conflict. You can find more resources about mental health and psychosocial support on the IFRC Psychosocial Centre website. Resources include manuals, webinars, policy documents, program materials, educational videos and information about upcoming trainings. My name